I think we're going to get started. Welcome to everybody. Good to see you this evening. For those of you that don't know, my name is Mark Recco. I'm the Executive Director of the Hoboken Housing Authority, and we're here for a resident meeting to update everyone on our progress on our renovation rehabilitation plan. We have our team with us tonight, and I'd like to go around and make sure we all know who each other are. We've got representation from the Housing Authority staff that have been working on this project, as well as the Torty Gallus planning team that has been with us during the whole process, as well as the enterprise partners are with us tonight. And we hope we can answer any of your questions to date and give you an idea of where we are and where we're going to be going over the next couple months, because we're really in a crucial phase of starting to polish off the plan and with a publication in the very near future. So again, my name is Mark Recco, and I'm with the Hoboken Housing Authority, the Executive Director. I think we've got Mr. Frank Merchant with us, the Director of Management. Welcome, Frank. Good to see you. And Daniel Perez, our Resident Services Coordinator, with us. Welcome, Daniel. We've got our wonderful tech guy, Angel, who's moderating for us today. He's the one that what you see as the Hoboken Housing Authority, so he's doing the tech behind the scenes, making sure everything goes right. From Enterprise, maybe Shannon and Christina. Shannon, you want to introduce yourself, say hello to everybody?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Shannon Leston. I work with the Enterprise team. Been working with the Housing Authority, oh gosh, probably a year now, trying to figure out what the best path forward is for their public housing portfolio, and repositioning it and getting some physical needs addressed.
Hello, good evening. My name is Christina Plant-Smith. I'm with Enterprise Community Partners and part of the Enterprise team with Shannon.
Welcome. And then maybe we'll go on over to Troy to lead us with the Torty Gallus introductions.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Troy McGee, and I'm with Torty Gallus and Partners. We're part of the team along with Higher Grulin Associates in the Communities Group. And again, I'm the principal in charge for the Torty Gallus side of the team. And just will ask the other team members to please introduce yourselves as well.
John or Susan?
I'm John Barry. I'm a planner with Higher Grulin Associates. We're a New Jersey-based firm that's been working with the Torty Gallus design team on advancing the redevelopment plan for the Housing Authority. Happy to see everyone again.
Hello, and I'm Jaime Bordenave. I'm the Communities Group part of the Torty Gallus team, and I'm told that I'm the numbers guy.
Briefly.
Hi, everybody. I'm Brian. Nice to see everybody again. If you're coming back, I'm an architect and planner with Torty Gallus and Partners.
Good evening. My name is David Stemble, and I am an architect and the project manager for the Torty Gallus planning team.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daniela Tony, and I'm an architectural designer with Torty Gallus's planning team as well.
And has John said hello to us yet?
Yes.
He did.
Oh, well,
I
you know,
did.
things go fast. Hello again, John.
Hey, Mark.
Sorry about that. All right, welcome everyone. I think we got everyone from our team, and I'd like to welcome everyone tonight. I'd like to make a couple notes. We are broadcasting live on Facebook, and we will be recording this meeting. So anyone who wants to come back and watch this later on, it will be posted on our website. So it'll be posted up on Facebook. So we're here to present to you and to listen to you today. We would like any questions that you have, feel free to ask them. We do have a chat function on our Zoom. You can post your questions on that chat function. You can ask to be promoted at the appropriate time as a panelist to ask us the question directly. But we will be reading the chats, and anything we get, we'll be trying to answer to the best of our ability. Any comments on the Facebook comments, we'll be reading those as well and getting them on the record for you and addressing them. We do have an HHA email as well that many of you know, and that is hha@myhhanj.com. That's hha@myhhanj.com. So again, we will try to capture any questions, comments you have by any method you can get to them tonight. Tonight is not like a formal board meeting that we often have, that you've got to go through this. We do ask you that you limit your questions and comments to a couple minutes, but other than that, let's proceed. And we've got some time here to get everyone up to speed with us. So I do want to make one comment on the survey. As many of you know, we do have a survey out there. You can link to it through our website or through many of the flyers that we have throughout the community. There is a QR code that you can zap on your phone. It will take you right to the survey. That survey will be open for you until February 20th. So you've got the rest of the week, and the more responses we can get on that, the better. But any way we can get your information, we welcome it. Any way we can get your opinion, we welcome it as we go toward this schedule. And speaking of schedules, probably the next thing to do in the meeting is to talk a little bit about the schedule and talk about where we are and what we're going to be doing over the next couple months. This is really crunch time on the schedule, so we want to have as much public outreach as possible, as many resident meetings as possible. So we've developed a little schedule here for everyone's knowledge, so you can know what's going up starting with tonight. Dave, you want to share that on our screen so everyone can see that? Great, thanks, Dave. So in that range, we've got the resident review meeting tonight to start really go over our development principles and what's going to be included in that plan, what the board has promised. We then have a resident advisory board meeting coming up at March 1st that we're going to be reviewing these same things with our RAB board. We then have a housing authority board meeting on March 10th. So at the board meeting, again, that's very public. We'd like you to be involved in that as much as possible. We are expecting that by the board meeting in March that we will have a draft plan out for everyone to review. That draft plan will be published publicly. The Housing Authority Board will be reviewing it. And then shortly after that, that very next week, we'll be having another one of these meetings on March 16th to go over that plan with you in detail. We will have the plan. We will go over it in this format. So, spread the word. That is going to be a significant step. We want you to see the draft plan. We want you to see what's included in the total plan, and we want to be able to review it with you through any means possible. So we will have that review meeting on March 16th, and then another review meeting, public resident review meeting with you on April 6th. Now that's two quick meetings, March 16th and then April 6th. That's because, again, we're having the draft plan out in March and then working toward that final plan that will go to the board on the April 14th board meeting as a final plan. So we would like to be able to have the draft plan before you and then the final plan in its form on April 6th before it goes over to our Board of Commissioners for an approval. So we can have your input on every step of the way. Again, a resident meeting tonight, another resident meeting on March 16th after our March board meeting, and then another resident meeting on April 6th before the board meeting in April. So we can have plenty of time to go over the plan, have you understand it, know what direction we're going and get your comments on that as we move forward. See, this plan, as it gets approved by our board, it doesn't automatically boom, it doesn't happen that fast. Once it gets approved, we have a lot of work to do. And there's a lot of steps in actually gathering the approvals for the plan, moving the plan forward, and financing the plan, and going from there. So our planning team has been working hard on just some very estimated timelines on what it might take once this plan is approved by our board and we move forward from there. And I'd like to ask maybe somebody from the Tortigalis team to take the second part of this estimated timeline and talk a little bit about what happens once the Housing Authority Board approves the plan.
Thank you, Mark. After the concept plan is adopted by the Housing Authority's Board of Directors, the next step in this process, as mandated by the New Jersey process, is a redevelopment plan that takes the concept plan and prepares a formal redevelopment plan for approval. And that process can take anywhere from 9 to 18 months. With that redevelopment plan in place and the city's approval, then we enter into what is known as the pre-development. This is when development partners are considered and financing for the first phase or two is put together, and that can take up to 12 to 18 months just for the financial approvals and the development permit process.
So it takes a little bit of time here, right?
Yes, it does. Then after that, prior to any construction, there can be a resident relocation process. And that can take anywhere from 4 to 6 months if the first phase is a substantial rehab of an existing building. So relocation within the community's properties, within the housing authority's properties. And then once those 3 steps are completed, then we would be looking at the groundbreaking for the first phase. The construction process can take anywhere from 24 to 30 months to complete. And so this is an estimated timeline of the steps to the grand opening of to the groundbreaking of the first phase.
And I just wanted to add, thanks, Dave. I just wanted to add, just in case someone reads one of these lines by itself, but the resident relocation process, 4 to 6 months, would start after the redevelopment plan approval process in the pre-development process. So it's not 4 to 6 months from now, but rather, a year to 18 months or even beyond that. I'm sorry, it would be even well beyond that. So more concurrently.
Thank you, Brian. And this is an estimated timeline. Things could go a little faster, things could go a little slower. It just depends on how fast we get out of the gate. We're committed that once this plan is approved, that we're going to move as quickly out of the gate as possible. We will be talking to everyone involved, and maybe we can get this plan to be a little shorter, but we're working on kind of past experiences of what other organizations have experienced and what it takes. If we can get some of this redevelopment plan approval process, for example, done quicker, then we're out of the gate quicker. It just depends. We're trying to, right now, from this distance, give our best estimate of where we're going to be 6 months, a year from now. So we know what the process is, and we can share that very publicly. So that's kind of our estimated timeline. There's two sections of it. One is over the next 60 days, really sharing with you, sharing with the community, sharing with the residents, what this plan looks like, what's involved with the plan. We're going to be talking a little bit about what's in there tonight. So we want to start there. And then at our next meeting in March, be able to go over with you a draft redevelopment plan. So you see what's included in the entire plan and which direction the housing authority is truly going. And then in April to come back to you again before that plan is approved. And then after that comes kind of the harder work of doing the actual redevelopment plan approval process, get everything approved through the city, everything that needs to be done, and then move on to the financials, the development, and then construction. So we're all focused on this, and we're going to be moving just as fast as we possibly can. So that's our basic timeline on where we're heading to. So what I'd like to do from here is share with you an important event that happened at our last board meeting. If you'll remember, back in June of last year, to start off our process, our board passed some development guiding principles that they gave me and my team here that you see tonight. Very clear orders and directions on what must be included in the plan, how the plan should be developed as guidelines. And during this entire process, we've stuck to those guidelines clearly. At the last board meeting, the board wanted to add some guidelines to that process to make sure as we go into our final phase that I and the staff and the team are all working to honor those guidelines and to make sure that the residents' best interest is included in the plan. So what I'd like to do is refresh everyone's memory on the development guidelines that were passed last June, and then review with you what our board passed and committed to in writing as a board resolution at our February meeting. So what I'd like to do now is share my screen and be able to go over those with you. So did that work? Can everyone see this titled Housing Authority of the City of Hoboken? Expanded Preservation and Development Guiding Principles. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Good. Thank you. So what you've got at the beginning are the commitments that our board and the Housing Authority made to everyone when this process started in June. And those commitments were, first, 1-for-1 replacement. We committed to preserving the agency's existing affordable housing stock and to maintaining the total number of HHA's owned affordable housing units. When redevelopment of existing housing is required, HHA commits to developing 1-for-1 replacement units and will not accept anything less than the number of units in our current housing stock. What that means, and this starts it out and I think is reiterated in our new principles, that the fears that folks have, and we understand that because some earlier iterations of redevelopment and housing authorities have not lived up to this standard. And we would like to be very clear that the Hoboken Housing Authority will be doing 1-for-1 replacement of all units. Residents that want to come back to the housing authority after renovation, redevelopment will have their spot reserved for them, period, turn page. That has been a commitment that we've kept in our hearts and our minds through this whole process. Of all of these development principles, I think it's certainly one of the most important, if not the most important. And we've heard your comments. We've heard the stuff that goes around about what happened at Duncan and what happened elsewhere around the country. And our board has been very clear that will not happen here in Hoboken, and that our organization is committed to replacing each and every single unit as we move forward through this. Our future development density goals. We will never go below the number of units that currently exist. A little repetitive, but worth being repetitive. But we will strive to increase the availability of low and moderate income housing to serve the unmet needs of our community. Our strategies, we will pursue all financially feasible strategies that ensure the long-term preservation of HHA's existing affordable housing portfolio, including HUD's rental demonstration program, Section 18, other strategies. What this means, I think, to boil it down in many ways, is that this idea of preserving the long-term preservation of affordable housing units. I think it's clear to us and to many, many people in our community that if we don't do something to significantly change our housing stock won't be with us for our children and grandchildren in the future. Your children and grandchildren. We want to assure that the Hoboken Housing Authority is here to help low and moderate income families for the next 50 years, the next 70 years, next 100 years. And this effort is to make sure that that's a realistic statement that we can say when we're at the end of this housing for low and moderate income families is secure and it's not going anywhere. We will evaluate the preservation using cost benefit. We always have to do things based on available dollars. What's the best cost benefit? What's the best cost to the housing authority and its residents? Priorities. We will allocate across the affordable housing portfolio based on priority and feasibility. We'll always consider factors such as physical condition of the housing and funding opportunities. Many of you know of the challenges we've had for years with our housing stock, that funding has gone down from HUD, that we have housing that has serious challenges. This is a way to fix that as we take a look at our housing stock and where we can put our best investments. Number 5, stakeholder. We pledge to provide all residents the opportunity to offer meaningful input at all stages of the planning and development process, to encourage active participation and to incorporate resident feedback when making decisions. You do know that we've been holding charrettes, we've been holding meetings on the field, we've been holding individual meetings, we've been doing everything we can to be true to that statement. We understand that the main campus plays a role in the neighborhood surrounding it. We have engaged the broader community to offer input during our stakeholder process, and you'll see that reflected in the final plan. Open, ongoing, frequent, and transparent communication with residents and broader community has been an important principle for us. And as we go into our final plans and after that, we will always listen to the community and the residents to have that weight on our decisions. Resident relocation. If resident relocation is required, and that is an if, but if we do major renovation redevelopment, we will be having to deal with resident relocation. We commit from the very beginning, all residents will have the right to return to their housing or a replacement unit, as long as the household is compliant with HHA's policies and rules. We will ensure that relocation results in as few disruptions to residents. We'll provide that information to residents. We'll strive to understand the needs. We will engage third-party partners and will minimize any permanent displacement. We want to make sure that everyone, and we will by regulation, make sure everyone can go back to the development that they originally lived in. It's our commitment. In developing, we'll make data-driven decisions. We'll do this correctly. We have mined a lot of information. We aren't just shooting off the cuff here. We've got some of the best housing development people in the country working with us that are on the call tonight, and other people behind the scenes. We're pleased with the team we've brought together. We will strive and always make smart future investments in affordable housing. to ensure that development acquisition activities are financially feasible and sustainable. Just to repeat, this effort is to make sure that low and moderate income housing stays as part of the Hoboken community for a long, long time. We need that. We need that housing in Hoboken. We will always take advantage to collaborate with local government on preserving and expanding affordable housing whenever we can in Hoboken. We will partner with highly proven and experienced development partners. People have done this across the country. This is not new, and we want to be able to benefit from their experience. Types of new development. We will consider other non-conventional development activities such as commercial, office, educational, or market rate housing that increase financial resources to the agency and provide opportunities to cross-subsidize the affordable housing portfolio. These activities will only be undertaken after thorough analysis showing the cost benefit to the housing authority of these activities. So this kind of idea is as we go through this development, we find that maybe a supermarket, maybe a medical facility would be good on our campus, that we will take a look at that financially and for the opportunities for what the neighborhood needs and truly consider it and see if we can make them happen. Our standards will improve the standards of all preserved affordable housing and develop any new affordable housing to the highest financially feasible standards, high design standards, energy efficiencies, sustainable and maintainable design standards and materials, durable finishes, and design. We're not going to build cheap. Accessibility, of course, I think is a major role that we're going to be including. Our developments and housing needs to be accessible to everyone and including as many amenities as we can. The Housing Authority's role is to partner with developers when appropriate, pursue partnerships that are advantageous to our residents and to our households, and maintain an ownership interest in all land in these partnerships. The Housing Authority is not disappearing. We are committed to maintaining an ownership interest in all of our land as we move forward on this. We'll maintain as great an ownership of the buildings as financially feasible. We'll work to assure that to the maximum extent possible, employment, training, and contracting opportunities created from our projects flow to moderate and low-income residents of our community. And this is not minor. As we move forward with a project of this size, employment opportunities, I've been involved in a number of these, definitely come to our residents in our community. So that was what we committed to back in June. And those principles are things that have guided us through this whole process since June, through all of our stakeholder meetings. And in the February meeting, the board committed to 7 new guidelines, 7 new principles, right? And these are as follows. To restate that one for one replacement remains the overall guiding principle. Right? As does assurance that there will be no displacement of existing residents. Our board really believes, and the Housing Authority throughout believes, that that is just crucial and worthy of repetition. One for one replacement, no displacement of existing residents. The apartment size mix can be adjusted to account for current underhoused and overhoused conditions. As we go through this, if somebody is in a 2-bedroom and needs a larger unit, we are looking to build a larger unit based on that information, or vice versa. If you're in a large unit and you only need a small one, to adjust our new buildings in accordance with that, and that is going to be best service to our existing residents, number 1. The low end of our acceptable unit count range is full replacement of our 1,354 existing units, which include the 200 of Fox Hill already undergoing RAD, but to commit once again that we will build and renovate and bring into modern standards no less then it's the same number of units we have now. Okay? No maximum number of units has been established, and we would like to maintain the flexibility in further phases to account for changing conditions. And if there is a potential to add more affordable housing throughout the city of Hoboken, we want to be able to be in a position to do that, because that is the business we're in. The next principle is that the first phase building anticipated to be located at the northern parking area, and you're going to see a schematic of these principles here in a moment. That's going to be shared with you and kind of be able to see these visually. The first phase building anticipated to be located at the northern parking lot of Harrison Gardens should be 6 stories. That as we go through this, our first building that we're going to be looking to build should be 6 stories. Increased height in later phases, particularly along the west side of the main campus, that's along the service road back there by the light rail, could be deemed appropriate. There has been a request and discussion of including a variety of building heights as we move forward in our development. But our start out for first building is 6 stories to go with the neighborhood and fit in with the neighborhood there. The preferred strategy is to replace existing housing units and housing only existing residents for at least the first phases. So their first phases will be focused on relocating existing residents. We're not talking about all kinds of new units, bringing other folks back in, folks that aren't already Hoboken Housing Authority residents. Hoboken Housing Authority residents will be focused on in the first phases. Okay? Mixed income would only be included when it takes care of the residents from the targeted existing buildings first. Right? And those will be limited to units that are above those necessary in the targeted buildings. So Hoboken Housing Authority residents first. Right? We acknowledge it may be beneficial to incorporate Christopher Columbus location as part of the second or third phase. I think that gives us a great opportunity to prevent front-loaded concentration of public housing units in the event mixed income units are introduced later on in phases. First phases, housing authority residents. Later phases may need flexibility in terms of potential land uses. In our first phase, we're not doing mixed land use, such as a store, such as other land uses. But in the future, if possibilities should come up for other land uses, for unit counts, building heights, and bulk, which means the size of a building on a property, obtaining additional sites for replacement housing elsewhere in the city. Our plan now has been limited to housing authority property. If there is a possibility, as this plan goes through the next few years, to find a piece of property elsewhere and be able to build there and work something out, we are definitely going to be open to that and deconcentrate our housing. But that is something for the future and later phases, and to have that flexibility. So those 7 new guidelines will also be guiding us as we come into the final plan. And I know that's a lot to kind of adapt and take a look at. We will be going back over these with you in the future meetings, and you'll see these incorporated into the draft plan as well as our future final plan. And after that, these are etched in stone principles that the board has told us we must follow. And frankly, we value them and agree with them. And has guided us through all of the work we've done over the last year. To conclude this part, I would like to turn it over to the Authority Gals folks and Brian to kind of take us through kind of a visual representation of what I was just talking about. So I'll hand it on over to you to share your screen. And I think I may have to do a stop share screen on this. So make sure I know how to do that here. Okay, found the button.
Great, thank you. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
I sure can.
Great. So thanks, Mark, for going through the conclusions or the additional, the expanded development principles, as we're calling them. This was a graphic that we created to just kind of illustrate in a diagram form what some of those principles mean. And then, you know, the ability to see this graphically, then we can kind of understand how we can use that to make the plan better. And as you see this plan here, this plan looks very familiar to the plan that the public saw, especially the residents saw back in November, back in December, when we've had previous meetings. Even the initial kind of concept coming out of the large residence meetings we've had under the tents on Mama Johnson Field. So this isn't anything terribly new as far as what it's looking like, but I just wanted to go through and to discuss some of the overlay and colors that we're using to describe these principles and further explain it to you. So they are numbered 1 through 7. That is the order of the bullets that Mark just read. They were changed to bullets in the actual document, but to keep track of them here, we numbered them. So number 1, like I'm just going to go through this again quickly and kind of paraphrasing, but 1-for-1 replacement remains the overall guiding principle as the assurance that there will be no displacement of existing residents. We will continue to say that because that is the most important principle. The apartment size, number 2, is the apartment size mix can be adjusted to account for under and over house conditions. That's, as Mark kind of described too, that's just accommodating for what the demand is currently for housing, acknowledging that some people may need smaller units, some people might need bigger units if their family is grown. That helps us determine the kind of the estimated number of units that we can build and fit into all these units. We need to kind of have a number. And so that was a good thing that we kind of decided that was the metric we could use. The low end of the acceptable unit range is full replacement or rehabilitation of the 1354. This diagram just shows 1154 because Fox Hill Gardens is currently being renovated, as you know, and that's that additional 200 units. And then it's important to state that there were no maximum number of units, and we'll get into that a little bit more when we talk about flexibility in later phases. Number 4 is building height. So the first phase building, which is anticipated to be, is F1. We've discussed this in our narratives before, but it makes sense being that is currently a surface parking lot, and it wouldn't need, no resident would need to move out of that parking lot to build the building and then start the process of moving into a new building. So F1 is kind of highlighted here, and we even colored it a darker yellow to kind of highlight the fact that that's when you see the draft come out, that'll be the most real and the most focused building that we know we can plan for ahead, and that'll be kind of the first phase. After that, the plan gets built around Mama Johnson Field, but we found areas in the plan that might accommodate larger heights than a 6-story height. So F1 was determined to be, we're going to keep that at 6 stories as kind of a match to the existing context in the neighborhood and not to overwhelm the project. But a 6-story building is an appropriate height for that building. But in other parts of the plan, especially back along the Palisades, back where we're going to be proposing to create a new park, there might be an opportunity to create further height to help the plan replace more units quicker, and then ultimately to provide more flexibility in the later phases on ways to, I think, earlier in the development principles, Mark said cross-subsidize or help financially support the mission of the housing authority to give affordable housing to their residents. So you can see these little orange pieces here are, they almost look like Jell-O. They're kind of transparent, and you'll see more of this in the draft. We'll be using similar graphics to discuss height opportunities, but these are just some opportunities where perhaps closest to the light rail station where density might want to be higher, we can maybe go higher in density and then kind of slope down away from that. And then the same goes for height along the park, and then sloping down towards kind of the existing fabric of Hoboken, which is generally 6 stories or around that height. Number 5 is a strategy to replace existing units and house only existing residents for at least the first few phases of the project. And then F1, like I mentioned earlier, is the first phase. Starting with the most clarity, that would be the first phase. So what this just means is, and we've kind of tried to highlight it here by using what we call ghosting or clouding or fading out some of the later blocks, but the buildings around Mama Johnson Field, around kind of creating a critical mass around a community hub, that's the field, and potential additional open spaces, an additional program in that area, maybe some new tot lots, things like that, new community centers. It would be built around this area, and these buildings here in the first few phases in particular, but really right around Mama Johnson Field, will be housing for the residents to get them moved out of the older homes as fast as we can. And then once we kind of fill in all of these buildings, including Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus was another one, and we can just jump to number 6, incorporate the Christopher Columbus building as part of a second or third phase. And what that'll help us do is get, again, more residents moved into brand new apartment buildings quicker, and some of them even kind of off-site to allow for more space to build brand new buildings on the Jackson campus. So utilizing Christopher Columbus, utilizing the space around Mama Johnson Field, again, not displacing and replacing all of the units is our goal, but the idea is that we can replace all of the units, and then perhaps there is some space left over for additional affordable housing or additional flexibility in land use. I'm going to roll into number 7, which is these later phases, because they're not necessarily might not necessarily be needed to replace all of the housing that exists now. It could be an opportunity to provide more open space, more commercial space, more community space, more affordable units. The idea is to keep it open as flexible as we can on these later phases. Again, this is just in the master plan report. I'm sorry, the concept report, that these buildings will be less defined, and we will concentrate our efforts on replacing the units first and foremost. That kind of rounds out the 7 conclusions of the expanded development principles. And we also showed here Adams Garden and Monroe Garden, that they're a critical part of the transformation of this neighborhood. They will be included in our plan on likely substantially renovating them, but that'll also mean that some there might be an additional demand for a senior building on within the main campus to kind of help people move and again not be displaced. So we're excited about all of these opportunities, and we're excited really to get this draft done and finally the report finalized, so we can make this real and get started. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Brian. Great presentation on that, and I think I think this plan is really starting to come together, and I think the next couple months, I think we're really going to see some expanded interest by the community, and I couldn't be more excited about this. This is, I think, a chance of a lifetime in Hoboken to make sure we preserve the low and moderate income housing that we have here and make sure that we're on a solid financial footing into the future. And that we've really changed the living conditions of our population, that everyone deserves good, solid, sustainable, long-term security, that these buildings that were built 70 years ago need this uplift. And I think we're on that road. I think we're dotting all the I's and crossing the T's. And I'm just incredibly excited about the next 2 months, because we're going to be laying this out there for everybody. And again, I encourage everyone to be with us during this process over the next couple of months as we keep coming back on resident meetings, coming back in March, coming back in April, to share with you as this plan becomes specific and developable. So thank you, team. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, I had just a few more thoughts I wanted to tell the
Please do.
residents. Yeah, one is these are principles that were expanded on, that were primarily around the form and the size of the project, right? But the other qualities of the project, how it looks and how the open spaces work, and how the community centers and opportunities for community spaces lay out, and the types of those spaces, are things that we heard from the residents throughout our previous meetings, especially the ones that we met together in person. And those will also be in this report. It's almost, we take them for granted, but that will make up the kind of lifeblood of this project. And these are just some agreeable things almost that we just needed to get a consensus on to move forward with some of the numbers. So just keep that in mind, that all of the feedback that we've heard and we will continue to hear, including feedback on the resident survey, is a very important thing we're looking forward to seeing, but also feedback tonight and onward. We look forward to your input about all aspects of your community and ways we can make it feel like home and feel like Hoboken. And then the second piece I just wanted to mention, we're going to be creating a book. We're calling it a book. It'll be available to be read on digital format as well. But it'll be a large document that will have a lot of different diagrams and a lot of different areas for ways to explain a lot of this. So we'll be reviewing this with you in these subsequent meetings, but look forward to an actual document that has a lot of this broken out into much more detail and have it explained. We'll have some diagrams about how exactly these buildings might get built, over time, and how they might start populating around Mama Johnson and beyond. And we'll talk about when a park could come in and what type of parks might we put in throughout the year based off of feedback. So it'll be this larger document that we're really excited about creating, and it'll be a very exhaustive, hopefully, report for you to review and to get excited about. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. And I think all of the work that we've done, all of the information that you've brought to us, all of the feedback you've given us, you will see that reflected in the report. That's in the draft and the final as it's coming out. So what comments do we have from the community at this point? Is there anything out there that you've got a question of?
I see one. I do see one. I see two questions that just popped up in the chat, and if I can jump on them real quick, I can certainly answer the first one. Yeah, the first one was, are you providing parking lots for the residents in this new plan? An excellent question. The answer is yes. So first is we will try to figure out ways to provide, especially in the first phase where we're taking away a parking lot to build a building, we'll provide temporary parking throughout the project. As the phasing goes on, there'll be temporary parking to kind of replace what if we do lose parking during the process. but all of these buildings, including F1, will have the ground floor. If you remembered from previous presentations, because of the location of where we are in Hoboken, and in fact, most of Hoboken is like this, because of the flood risks. Most buildings need to be, all the residential portions of it need to be lifted up above a certain level. And that level means that nothing can be on the ground floor that is a house or a home. And so if you walk around your neighborhood, you probably see this, in a lot of the buildings, there is a ground floor of either commercial space or parking. And in the plan for these larger blocks, and most of these blocks, is to have a substantial amount of the interior of that first floor be parking for the residents of those buildings. So that kind of, you can see in the purple, just in this diagram here, I can zoom in a little bit. The purple level here is the ground floor. There'll be opportunity to put community center space and resident space down there as well. But in a lot of these, where it's a big block, there'll be a substantial amount of parking. And then the second question is, are senior buildings going to be included in the new renovation? Yes. So let me just point to Adams Gardens and Monroe Gardens, which are these blue buildings here that are not on the main campus, but short by. So we included Monroe in the view because that one's kind of right next to Jackson, and then Adams is just kind of a box away, but it's a couple blocks away. We were planning, the report will show how both of these will be substantially renovated. That means, once residents would move in, move out to perhaps a new building here, one of them could get started, and that would be potentially taking out all of the older units, all of the old, everything that's inside the building essentially would be kind of taken out and rebuilt, and a lot of the units, the smaller studios, would be replaced with 1-bedrooms. And so those buildings, and then perhaps to replace some of the units that we lose by that process, we could build back some more, an additional building on the same site. That's one opportunity. So that would happen on both the Adams Gardens building and Monroe. It would be part of a process. It wouldn't be the first phase, but it'll be middle of the project phase that these will start to be renovated. And we've noticed with the demand, both on looking at the demographics of the existing community and kind of projecting what the demand will be in the future, as far as who's there now and who's aging. There seems to be demand for an additional senior housing, and so there's a possibility to have another senior housing building built, maybe perhaps in the main campus, to kind of again make these moves work. Hope that answered your questions. I have this is great, rapid fire. It's just like a live meeting here. Thank you for answering my first question for Joanna. My second question is, will your plan also include unit washer and dryer, or there'll be community laundry rooms? That's a great question. I don't know if we will get into the specifics of that for this report. But what the idea is, we'll create buildings that could possibly have washer and dryers in the rooms, or in community laundry rooms, perhaps on each floor. But what ends up happening is once in several years, like the schedule said, once we get past this report, once we get past kind of city approval processes, and then we start looking at these buildings, there'll be a whole nother process where you will be very much involved in how that building comes together and what was in it. And I think, the possibility of having unit washer dryers is real. Certainly affordable housing projects across the country incorporate those into their units all the time. So it's not something unheard of. It's a very real possibility, but not something that we can, I don't know if we can say yes or no completely yet. Mark, do you want to tag on to that one?
Sure, I could. There's the process here is kind of the question is ahead of where we are.
Yeah.
And I think as Brian alluded to, once we're past the overall planning and we're, for example, designing building F1, We've actually got an architect in to design that building. We will be continuing this process with you to start saying, this is what our first designs of the units look like. And by the way, here's how many bathrooms, here's how the layout would look. Here's where the washer and dryer would go, or here's where the community laundry would be, either on each floor or a community laundry. Most of the development I've seen over the past number of years have included individual washers and dryers in units. But I could just say that's a little premature. We'll be going through this process on designing the actual building with you, as we progress to that level and getting to the outside design and the inside design of the units. So.
Yeah. There are some things we can be more certain of. One that came up in discussions in last fall is that these will be modern constructed buildings that will be up to all of the latest building codes, and and also it will include air conditioning, in each unit. That's a big amenity that does not exist currently necessarily, but will exist in all of these buildings, as well as very safe fire safety codes and things like that, and ways to safely exit your building in case you have to. Do you want to, Mark, answer there's one about, will electricity still be included in our unit?
Got it.
That means, okay.
Yeah, sure. Whether it would be master metered or individually metered is kind of another way to ask that. Right now, all of our buildings are master metered. Usually when you do a transition, you revert over to individual metered apartments. Those of you that have been on Section 8 vouchers, for example, in the past, know how that works with a utility allowance for each resident. Residents will always pay 30% of their income for rent and utilities combined. So even if a unit is master metered and the electricity goes into a resident's name, the housing authority covers that electrical cost for you. So in the final design will be the final decision whether they're individually metered or master metered, again, for the entire building. But either way, there's always, if it goes to individual metering, there is a utility allowance that is paid to the resident to cover the cost of those utilities. The second question is the option of open Section 8. I think that means, would a resident be given an option to be issued a Section 8 voucher? I think that's what the question is. And I think as we go into that phase, that is a real possibility. If somebody were to wish to be, in essence, what they were to call vouchered out or take a voucher and move away from the housing authority permanently, we certainly don't encourage that, but I think that will be a possibility as we go down the line here. We would have a final answer as we get closer, but I think in most circumstances under the RAD program that folks have an opportunity to do a Section 8 voucher if they would wish to. Would anyone on the team like to correct me on that? I just want to make sure I'm speaking correctly, because I think that opportunity is there for folks.
I'll jump in, Mark.
Yeah, Shannon.
Yeah, so HUD is really encourages what they call choice mobility for residents. And so as a part of what will be this new Section 8 program, it is required that once you have signed your new Section 8 lease and you've been living, with the within the Hoboken apartments, once 12 months have passed and you think you're interested in securing a mobile voucher to move elsewhere, then you can just go to the Section 8 department and put your name on the list. And for RAD properties, your name goes to the top of the list. And when the next available voucher becomes available, then you would be leased up with a portable voucher. But it does depend on whether or not there's a voucher available.
Shannon, if I could add a clarification. So the 12 months is if it's a RAD PBV, and it's 24 months if it's RAD PBRA, which this may well be. So just leave that as an open question.
So it depends a bit on what the financing is a year so down the line. Is that fair to say, Jaime?
That's fair. Yeah.
Okay. But either way, that opportunity will be there. Thank you for that question. That's a good one. All of them are good ones so far. I would like to ask Daniel, do we see any other questions from any other formats?
No, Mr. Recco, no questions on email, and I see no comments on our Facebook page.
I would like to say that once again, I think somebody has a one moment here, but I would like to say that anywhere in between our meetings as well, if you reach out to us at that HHA email, or if you were to drop a note in our Dropbox at central office, or if you were to walk in and hand a note with a question, or call me or us directly, we'll be glad to answer your questions and make sure they get into a list of questions that are answered at the next meeting or the next couple meetings. So we will continue to be answering your question. I see a question on which building of residence will begin the moving phase into F1. Brian, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, at the moment, I don't know if we can say for certain, but in March, we should have a little bit more clarity for you on that. But it'll be a numerous amount of buildings, not just one. But it kind of depends on the location of them at the moment. So we're still finalizing that, but we'll have more clarity for you in March is the answer.
Okay, yeah, on our draft plan, and thank you for that, Ms. Feeney. Good to see you asking questions. Somebody, is this Ms. Feeney from Fox Hill as a follow-up? For Brian Tomato, I lived in Fox Hill. Have you and your team visited Fox Hill? Okay, and she's worried about
I think it's a
some
maintenance. Yeah.
infestation there. Ms. Feeney, we'll reach out to you and talk to you about any infestation problem you have there. But we do have some work coming to Fox Hill soon. So we'll contact you, Ms. Feeney. I promise we'll give you a call, hopefully tomorrow, and talk to you about these issues you might be having.
And that is certainly a valid concern that the buildings, this project will be will take a long time to build all the way out of what we see on the screen, right? So people will be living in these older buildings for quite some time to make this work. And but I think the goal is to get some of these buildings built as soon as we can to generate a little more financial stability for the housing authority to kind of continue to upkeep the buildings that they need to at a high standard. I think that's been set out throughout too, but it's getting some more solidarity with upkeep.
Yeah, and we're definitely committed to continuing our fight against mice. I think it's a Hoboken issue as well as everyone's, and we'll certainly reach out to you, Ms. Feeney, to work on that issue for you. All right. Once again, Daniel, Lourdes, anything else on any other format?
No questions or comments.
Okay. And as we go through this process, this is just so exciting. I think we're really going to see some things change over the next couple of years here. My team has been really working on this. Thank you for your comments on the washer and dryer. It would be great, wouldn't it? And I too am very excited about the future of HHA. This is going to change our footprint, our relationship to Hoboken, and we want all of us involved in this process as we go forward. This is real. We're moving. We've got the right partners. We've got HUD involved. We've got a national planning team. So please go out and tell your friends and neighbors about the next series of meetings because they're going to be important. They're going to impact our future, all of us, and particularly the residents. We are working tirelessly to improve your living conditions. So please reach out to us, and look forward to seeing you soon. If there's no more questions, I think we're pretty well finished, and I'd like to thank everyone that's been involved here. So we appreciate you, and we'll be talking to you soon. Take care.
Right.
Good
Good
night.
night now. Good night.
Everybody.
Thank you.
And Ms. Feeney, if you're still on, I will check on the homeless question that you had.